All right, what's going on, patrons? This is Rob, and we are picking back up again with Punisher Max. Yes, we are doing the conclusion to Mother Russia. And this opens up in the most amazing way ever because everybody's panicking, right? The fact that Frank Castle basically said, we're going to launch a nuke at like Moscow, right? We're going to nuke the capital city of Russia. And all the generals are freaking out. Everybody's kind of like, why would you put the Punisher in a missile silo? And Nick Fury's response, all of you shut the fuck up. It's pretty awesome. Basically, the controls for the nuke being totally destroyed by Castle and the Delta Force guy, now it's just the three of them, right? And their whole goal is to make it out of there as fast as they possibly can. And Frank Castle's doing the one thing that he says so many people didn't do before. He's banking that the Russians are not stupid. And so what this does is it switches over to General Zakharov, right? This guy who's like an old school, like Soviet era general who just doesn't play games, you know, and the whole time this is going on, like literally he's just kind of, he's not really even panicking. It's just kind of like, okay, so like you got Colonel Lungaysky here, right? Who's just kind of like trying to talk this guy into reason, trying to get him to like agree to whatever Frank Castle's demands are. None of them really know that it's Americans, but at the end of the day, Zakharov suspects that it is. And then everybody kind of starts panicking, right? Because it's like this countdown is beginning, right? It's not a bluff. It's not like they're saying this is what we're going to do, but they're not backing it up. Like the silo doors open and the rocket powers up. And in 5 seconds, the rocket takes off. And that's exactly what it does. Like it achieves liftoff, it goes flying out, and it's like, they're like, what in the hell is the target? It's like the target is like Moscow, right? Nick Fury's just like, dude, Frank Castle, you crazy son of a bitch. And it's just like, dude, like this is nuts, man, because the American generals are like, dude, like we sent a guy in there to extract some little girl, and now they're nuking the capital city of Russia. Like this is going to ignite a whole, like a nuclear war, right? MAD, mutually assured destruction. That's what's going to come out of this, right? Like it just takes this one guy who suspects that it's us to point the finger at the Americans and say, the Americans are the ones that launched this attack. And then it's just all out nuclear war, right? The world comes to an end. That's what's hinging on this, right? The end of the entire world. Meanwhile, you go back to Zakharov again, and you got this guy that chimes in and says like Moscow wants an update, like they want to know what's going on, you know, and he just says like, tell them everything will be fine, right? Like Nikolai Alexandrovich Zakharov gives his word, and it's just like, what in the heck is going on? And this guy, right? Like this guy is convinced that it's Americans, right? He's convinced that it's one of these American soldiers. Lungaysky is not having any of it, right? He's just like, there's no way it's an American, like it's these Al-Qaeda terrorists, like they hijacked a plane, right? It was shot down in Russian space. This is just like a multifaceted move, right? And having no idea that it was all orchestrated by the US government, right? This guy, Zakharov, is just like, nope, it's the Americans. Like I can feel it in my gut. I know for a fact it has to be the Americans. There's no other option here, right? They were sent here for the purpose of extracting this Barbarossa virus, and that's basically it. But Lungaysky just can't let it go. And so where one of these guys is on the phone with Moscow, Lungaysky goes to take the phone, Zakharov shoots him. Done, right? That's the end of that, right? This guy gets shot, and now he's donezo. Meanwhile, like within 10 seconds of that, the rocket fizzles out and just crashes out in the middle of the Siberian landscape, right? It just fizzles out and dies and just kind of crashes down. And we end up finding out that this was actually the escape plan of Frank Castle, right? His idea was to get inside of one of the, get inside of this nuclear bomb and then fly it, you know, however far it goes. And then when it crashes, like they'll be safe with inside the fuselage, and then just basically get out that way, right? So basically just like drop to jump out so that when this thing crashes into the ground, they're not going to die. When they finally get there, like there's a search that's kind of issued by Zakharov, but that's more or less the end of him, right? We don't really see much more of him after that. And then it's just Frank Castle and the Delta Force guy. And it's kind of one of these things, right? This Delta Force guy was told by the American generals, achieve your mission by any means necessary, right? Extract this girl by any means necessary. And from his perspective, it meant up to and including killing that little girl if he has to. But right now they're in a situation to where this guy's pack basically broke. He lost his weapon. He lost his pack. It's out there somewhere. Who knows where? And if they go hunting for it, they'd probably die in the process. They've only got one coat to keep them warm. Whoever's left without a coat is going to die. And the response of Castle is, we'll draw sticks, right? If you pick the long one, then you take the girl and you run 10 miles to the Navy SEAL pickup point. But if I get the girl, then you just stay here and you die. Like, but either way, one of us is going to die. You know, and it's this thing, like you were told, achieve your mission by any means necessary. And this guy, he basically, you know, Frank Castle says, maybe now you know what that actually means, right? Because up to this point, you were only really putting your life on the line so much as you had to deal with the Russians, but now you're in this wild situation. Frank Castle gets the long stick. Frank Castle walks. This guy just sits in that area and dies, right? He's just left to the elements and dies within minutes of frostbite and basically freezes to death. Following that, it picks up with Frank Castle arriving back in the States with Nick Fury, and the generals are pissed. They're mad as hell. And the reason why is because it took a little while to get this girl here, right? Like it took a little while for them to be picked up by the Navy SEALs, for the Navy SEALs to transport them on a submarine to Alaska, and then in turn get from Alaska to this location, right? It's been about 2 or 3 days. And so during that time period, the medics on board the submarine were there to get a blood sample from this girl in order to extract the Barbarossa virus. But Frank Castle wouldn't let them get anywhere near her because he promised her, I will never let anybody hurt you. So like they couldn't get anywhere near to extract a blood sample. Lord knows the Navy SEALs were going to try to take this guy out. This guy literally just challenged the Soviet general and won, threatened to send the world into like a nuclear holocaust. What would this guy not be willing to do to keep this girl alive? So just to be smart, they didn't even go against Frank Castle, which is probably the smarter move. But the generals are pissed off because the antivirus inside her body has destroyed the virus inside her body, right? So like now Barbarossa's gone. There's nothing they can really do about it. And it's kind of a crazy thing because the entire mission was now just a huge waste of time. And so ultimately you end up having Nick Fury, of course, who's beyond any form of arrest from the American government, who basically starts to go about and kind of do his thing, basically leave. The general's like, get Nick Fury off the base and arrest Frank Castle. Frank Castle puts the girl down and he's like, that's not going to work, guys. Like, you can try to take me on if you want to. You'll lose, but you can try to take me on if you want to. And like Nick Fury's just kind of like, anytime you like, guys, like whenever you want to. And they're kind of like, no. We're good, right? So like they back down, right? So any chance the general had of arresting Frank Castle is gone. But the cool thing about this, and this is what makes Frank Castle so intelligent, you know, the Barbarossa virus is gone, and Frank Castle's kind of like, you don't really seem to be upset about that, right? Talking to Nick Fury's like, you don't really seem to be upset. And as a matter of fact, a suspicious man might think that you set this whole thing up just to get that girl out of there, that you had no interest in the virus. And Nick Fury's like, yeah, man, I mean, I guess a suspicious man might look at that if a guy sent some guy into a foreign territory, a guy he knew would not kill a kid, and wouldn't go the lengths that needed to be done in order to achieve that virus, that even he has rules, and his job is to get that girl out of there. Yeah, I mean, a suspicious man might think that was kind of the case, you know, hint, hint, nudge, nudge, wink, wink. And so it's kind of like, okay, so Nick Fury orchestrated all of this. Nick Fury set all this up. But the crazy thing is that where Frank Castle basically tells Galena that Nick Fury is going to take her safe to people that will look after her, she doesn't want to leave. And for Frank Castle, this is the most crushing thing, right? Because I wouldn't go as far as to say that he sees his daughter in this little girl, but what he does see is a little innocent girl who was caught up in an impossible situation and has no real control over her surroundings. But Nick Fury is a guy he can trust, right? He trusts Nick Fury, and he trusts Nick Fury when he says, I will make sure this girl stays safe, because Nick Fury doesn't want to have to deal with the consequences of what would happen if he didn't, right? That like if this girl was somehow betrayed, or if Nick Fury handed her over to people that killed her and then dissected her to find the remnants of this Barbarossa virus, Frank Castle would make Nick Fury rue the day that happened. He'd turn his world upside down and skin him alive, right? And that's basically it, right? Like Frank Castle achieves the mission, but like at the end of the day, like, you know, he kind of goes back, like he doesn't get anything that he wanted, right? He was promised these various codes to all these different intelligence gathering databases in order to access all these different criminals, the criminals he didn't know about, the criminals that he has to take care of that he wasn't aware of. But like all those passwords are changed now, right? Like the generals would have changed all that stuff up. And so now Frank Castle walks out no more successful than he was before, with nothing to show for it. But at the end of the day, he did achieve the mission, which is ultimately what he set out to do. So with that being said, guys, we're gonna bring this video to an end. Thank you guys for being patrons. I love you guys to death. You guys are amazing. And yeah, next Tuesday, we will pick up with the next installment of the Punisher Max series. Now I'll catch you all later. Peace.